Welcome back to State of the Union. President Trump loves to talk about his TV ratings, if not his current approval ratings. So he must be pleased to know that 33 million people watched the primetime rollout of his Supreme Court pick, Neil Gorsuch. But what do Americans think of the choice? Well, a brand new CNN poll shows that a plurality, 39%, were left with a positive first impression. That compares with 45% for President Obama's never-confirmed pick, Judge Merrick Garland, and 54% for now Chief Justice John Roberts. But when it comes to confirming the new nominee, opinions are sharply divided along party lines. Just 22% of Democrats think the Senate should vote to confirm him, while an overwhelming 84% of Republicans do. So what will Senate Democrats do? Joining me now live from Burlington, Vermont is Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Let's start with the Supreme Court. Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley is vowing to filibuster Neil Gorsuch, President Trump's pick. Senator Merkley believes that McConnell and the Republicans stole that seat from the Democrats. He is, of course, Merkley, the one senator who endorsed your presidential bid. Will you be joining Merkley's filibuster?
Well, I think there's no question but that the nomination should get serious debate and have 60 votes. Have 60 votes. To do it less, to change the rules under which we have been operating for many, many years would be absolutely unacceptable. And I'll tell you why, Jake. We are living in a dangerous and unprecedented moment in modern American history. What this Supreme Court decision is about is whether or not we continue Citizens United and allow billionaires to buy elections. It's whether or not we continue Roe versus Wade and allow a woman to control her own body. It's whether or not we have a Supreme Court which protects the right of the government to make sure that climate change is dealt with, whether workers have the right to join unions. So this is a major, major nomination. It should require 60 votes and a very serious debate.
So you are going to be joining Jeff Merkley in requiring 60 votes to cut off any sort of filibuster?
Look, Obama's nominations required 60 votes. So should Trump's, absolutely.
So let me show you what you said after Justice Scalia died last February. Take a listen.
The Supreme Court of the United States has 9 members, not 8. We need that 9th member.
So how does what you're saying now square with your desire for a 9th member on the Supreme Court?
Well, it's perfectly consistent. Obama had to get 60 votes. That's the rules of the United States Senate. And if 60 people vote to confirm Judge Gorsuch, he will become the next nominee. That is the process. Those are the rules that we operate under. But again, I worry very much, Jake, that under these very exceptional times, when we have a president who I fear very much is moving us in a very authoritarian direction, a president who apparently has contempt for the entire judiciary, suggests that a judge who makes a decision against them is a so-called judge, a president who attacks all of the media as fake media, who attacks our intelligence agencies as operating in neo-Nazi fashions. I want a Supreme Court that's going to stand up for civil liberties, for our constitutional rights, for the rights of workers, for environmental rights, for the rights of women. So yes, 60 votes to appoint the next Supreme Court justice.
President Trump took steps on Friday to begin dismantling the Dodd-Frank financial regulations that were put into place following the economic crash of '08. Take a listen to President Trump talking with Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase.
So many people, friends of mine, that have nice businesses, they can't borrow money, they just can't get any money because the banks just won't let them borrow because of the rules and regulations and Dodd-Frank, so we'll be talking about that.
You have long called for stronger banking regulation. There is this study by the Harvard Kennedy School of Government that found that community banks were having a difficult time complying with the regulations in Dodd-Frank. Do you see any upside at all to relaxing any of the Dodd-Frank regulations?
You know, it is hard not to laugh to see President Trump alongside these Wall Street guys. I have to say this, Jake, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. This guy is a fraud. This guy ran for president of the United States saying, Donald Trump, I'm going to take on Wall Street. These guys are getting away with murder. Then suddenly he appoints all of these billionaires. His major financial advisor comes from Goldman Sachs, and now he's going to dismantle legislation that protects consumers. This is a guy who ran for president saying, I'm the only Republican, I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And then he appoints all of these guys who are precisely going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I hope that all of those folks who voted for Mr. Trump because he thought that he would stand up for working people, man, this guy is, he's a good showman. I will give you that. He's a good TV guy. But I think he's going to sell out the middle class and the working class of this country, and that business on Wall Street. He told us, in fact, it's in the Republican platform, he's going to bring back Glass-Steagall. We're going to be dividing up commercial banks from investor banks from insurance companies. Then he has all of the big Wall Street guys on his side, and now he's working for Wall Street.
But Senator Sanders, while you very strongly made the case throughout the campaign after Hillary Clinton got the nomination that President Trump would do this, and that even though he was using some of the same rhetoric you used when it came to Wall Street, not to believe him and trust him, there were a lot of Sanders supporters out there who I think believed President Trump, then candidate Trump, partly because there had been so many accusations of Hillary Clinton being so tied to Wall Street.
Well, here's my only point, Jake. Look, it is one thing if you run a campaign that says, look, I think Wall Street's great. I think the drug companies are great. I think we have to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And if people want to vote for that, that's fine. That's democracy. But you have a president who I think in a totally fraudulent campaign said that I'm going to stand up for the working people. Look at his cabinet. We've never had more billionaires in a cabinet in the history of this country. Look at his appointees. These are people who are going to go after the needs of working families, the elderly, the children, the sick, and the poor. That is called hypocrisy. And by the way, I think people like Mitch McConnell, who you just had on, who is a mainstream conservative politician, are going to be put into a very, very difficult place. And I would hope that people like Senator McConnell and other Republicans have the courage to stand up, to Trump's movement toward authoritarianism, toward a situation where Trump says, everybody is terrible and wrong. I am the only guy who can protect the American people. You know what? Men and women in our military did not stand up and fight and die to lead us in the direction of an authoritarian society. We are a democracy, not a one-man show. We are not another Trump enterprise. It's called the United States of America. We're not a business run by Mr. Trump. And I hope that Senator McConnell, who's a decent guy, conservative guy, I disagree with him on everything. But I would hope that he and his Republican friends will make it clear to Trump that this country belongs to all of us and that it's not a one-man show.
Senator, there's a big fight going on right now, as you know, about who will lead the Democratic National Committee. It's starting to shape up as something, a bit of a proxy battle between the Sanders wing and the Obama-Biden wing of the Democratic Party. When former Labor Secretary Tom Perez picked up the endorsement of former Vice President Biden, you said, Joe Biden is a friend of mine, but you went on to say that the question is simple. Do we stay with a failed status quo approach, or do we go forward with a fundamental restructuring of the Democratic Party? Is that what you think of Vice President Biden, that he represents a failed status quo approach?
Look, I like Joe, and I certainly have enormous respect for President Obama. But the facts are that despite the reality that we have an extreme right-wing Republican Party, which is way out of touch with the American people on every issue, they now control the White House, the Senate, the House, and 2/3 of the governor's chairs. If we continue along the same way, I think you're going to get the same results. So what I believe is we have got to open up the door of the Democratic Party. You got to bring in working people. You got to bring in young people. We got to raise money by small donations rather than being dependent on wealthier people. And I think we need to fundamentally change the way the Democratic Party does business and how it is prepared to stand up to the big money interest. You can't be on both sides. The Democratic Party has got to say, yeah, we're going to take on the greed of Wall Street, the greed of the pharmaceutical industry, the greed of corporate America that throws American workers out on the streets and moves to Mexico and China. We are on the side of the elderly and the workers, not on the side of big business. That's a decision that the Democratic Party has got to make. I think you know where I am on that.
Senator, I have a lot of questions for you about Obamacare, but I'm going to save them until Tuesday night when CNN brings the debate between you and Ted Cruz live on CNN on Obamacare. I want to ask you, as a closing question, about something that is admittedly rather frivolous. I want to ask you about this bizarre sighting at Paris Fashion Week from Balenciaga. Take a look. These are a number of people, models on a runway in Bernie clothes. Did you ever think that you would become a fashion icon?
No, not quite, Jake. I think of my many attributes, being a great dresser is, or a fashion maven is not one of them.
Well, apparently there's a designer out there who begs to differ. Senator Sanders, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And of course, Senator Sanders will join us again Tuesday night for the next CNN debate. Make sure to watch as he and Senator Ted Cruz go head to head on what comes next for Obamacare as President Trump seeks to repeal and replace it. That's this Tuesday live at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on CNN. Our thanks to Senator Sanders.